guys. Okay, so the Pythagorean Theorem, and when do you use it? The Pythagorean Theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A and b's are the legs of the triangle, and they make up that right angle. C is always the hypotenuse. Okay, also, when do you use it? When it is a right triangle. All right, so it looks something like this. And you are trying to find one side. Just one side. Okay, so let's do this. All right, this would be A and B and C. All right, here's our right angle. Across from it, right here, is our hypotenuse. So we're going to take our A, we're going to square it and add it to x squared. And we're going to have 17 squared, our C. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do 64 plus x squared equals 289. All right, I'm going to subtract the 64, and I'm going to get x squared equals 225. I'm going to take the square root, and I'm going to get 15. Okay, moving right along, same thing. This would be my A, this would be my B, and this would be my C. So 10 squared plus 11 squared, not plus, equals x squared. Well, 10 squared is 100, 11 squared is 121, and then x squared. So 221 equals x squared. We're going to take the square root and take the square root, and we'll get approximately 14.87. Okay, so determine whether the three sides create a right triangle. So the two shorter sides add to be greater than the largest side. Okay, so we've got to add these two shorter sides together, 8 and 10. Well, 8 plus 10 equals 18, and that is greater than 12. So that works. It is a triangle. Now we need to classify it as acute, right, or obtuse. So I'm going to take the longest side. All right, my longest side is going to be 12. I'm going to square it, and I'm going to compare it to the sum of my two shorter legs squared. So 8 squared and 10 squared. So 144, 64, and 100. All right, so when I add these together, I get 144 and 164. Since the sum of my two shorter legs is bigger, it's acute. All right. Sum of two shorter legs squared is bigger. All right, that's how I know it's acute. And now moving down along, I'm going to add my two shorter legs, 9 and 12, which would give me 21, which is greater than 15, so that works. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take my largest side, so 15. I'm going to square it and compare it to 9 squared plus 12 squared. So 81 plus 144, and compare it to 225. Well, 81 plus 94 is 225, so they are equal, which means it's a right triangle. All right. And then last but not least, we're going to prove that this is a triangle to start with. So two smaller sides adding together. All right, they are 61, which is greater than 39, so check. That works. And let's do this. I'm going to do 39 squared. I'm going to compare it to 31 squared plus 35 squared. Right, 31 squared is 961. 35 squared is 1,225. And 39 squared, maybe I already just said that, is 1521. All right, so when we add them together, we get 1521 and 2,186. Since this is bigger, this last one, which somehow that line disappeared, I didn't notice that, sorry, is going to be an acute triangle also. Okay, next up, a 20-foot ladder is leaning up against the house. If the base of the ladder is 9 feet away from the house, how high up the house does the ladder reach? Round to the nearest hundredths place. So let's say this is the house, and a ladder is leaning up against it. Just to give you a visual, I'll do my best to quickly draw a ladder. We know the ladder is 20 feet, and that the base, the bottom of the ladder, is 9 feet away. How high up the house, so how high here, that's going to be our x. Okay, so this creates a right angle right here, which means we know two sides, and we want to figure, we're going to use the Pythagorean Theorem. So I'm going to do x squared plus 9 squared, right? The two sides that make up my right angle. Across from it is my hypotenuse, which is 20 squared. So I'm going to have x squared plus 81 equals 400. I'm going to subtract 81 and get x squared equals 319, square root, and get approximately 17.86 feet up the house. Okay. This says, given the triangle below, solve for x and y. Write your answer as, if you could read the problem, write your answer as simplified radicals. So this is a 45, 45, 90 triangle, right? And you could figure that out because you could add these knowing that they have to sum to 180 and that this would have to be 45. Okay, so that means since these base angles are equal, these sides are equal. But we also know that the sides of a 45, 45, 90 are n and n and n rad 2. Okay, so we want to figure out what n is. That way we know what x and y are. So I'm going to do 10 equals n rad 2. I'm going to divide by rad 2 and divide by rad 2 just so I can get n by itself. I'm going to have n equals 10 over rad 2. And here we have to rationalize. We cannot have a denominator on the bottom, so we're going to multiply both the top and the bottom by rad 2. I'm going to get 10 rad 2 over 2. Because remember, rad 2 times rad 2 is simply rad 4, but then we take the square root of that, and that's where we get the 2. Okay, well now these two numbers are both outside of radicals, so they can be simplified. 10 divided by 2 is 5 rad 2. All right, and then x and y are both n, so we now know that y is also 5 rad 2. Right, this problem is a little bit friendlier. Again, I'm going to go ahead and label my sides, knowing this is a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So I now know that n this time is equal to 8, which means I know that y is equal to 8. And if n is equal to 8, I simply have to insert an 8 where the n is, and I know that my hypotenuse, my x side, is 8 rad 2. All right, as we move down, we start to see that these triangles are a bit different, right? Hold on, let me see if I can brighten the light up in the picture. It's a 30, 60, 90. So across from, this would be 30, across from 30 is our n, across from 60 is n rad 3, and across from our 90 is 2n. So to solve for this, I'm going to do 2n equals 18. I'm going to divide by 2 and divide by 2 and get n equals 9. Oops, I was supposed to switch back to purple. But here we now know that this side, this x, is equal to 9. And since we know n is equal to 9, we now know that this is 9 rad 3. Okie doke. This one gets a bit trickier, right? Across from 60 is n rad 3. This we know would be 30. Across from 30 is n. And across from 90 again is 2n. So we need to figure out this problem right here. We're going to do n rad 3 equals 9. Okay? Let's go ahead and solve for n. So we're going to divide by rad 3 and divide by rad 3. We're going to get n equals 9 over rad 3. We can't divide by rad 3, right? So we've got to rationalize. Oops. And multiply both the top and the bottom by rad 3. And that is going to become 9 rad 3 over 3. And then we're going to reduce those and get 3 rad 3. So we know that n is equal to 3 rad 3, which right here, that's our x. So we're going to do 3 rad 3 right there. And then y is, 2 times n. So we're going to do 2 times 3 rad 3. Keep in mind the radical protects it, right? It can only be affected by another radical. So 2 times 3 is 6, and then that radical's protected. So it simply stays 6 rad 3. Okay, as we move along here, it says write the ratio for sine, cosine, and tangent for angle A. So everything is going to be based off of this angle right here. Right? This is going to be our adjacent, right? That's our leg that's adjacent. This we know is our hypotenuse because it's directly across from our 90-degree angle. And this is our opposite, all the way over here. So sine of A, sine is so opposite over hypotenuse, 12 over 37. Cosine A, cosine is ka, right? So ka, toa, which is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse, 35 over 37. And tangent is going to be toa, opposite over adjacent. So 12 over 37. Not 37, 35. I'm like, wait, that doesn't sound right. 12 over 35. Opposite over adjacent. Okay, now we're going to solve for x using those trig ratios. So we're going to put googly eyes on the given angle. We're just going to go ahead and label, this is our adjacent, this is our hypotenuse, and this is our opposite. So it wants us to solve for x, and we have information on this opposite side. So I have an O and an H, which means I'm going to do sine, right? O and an H is sine. Sine of 37. 7, right? That angle equals my opposite, which is 23 over x. I've told you before that when x is on the bottom, you can have these swap places, but a lot of us are still struggling with that. So what I'm going to show you is we want to get x by itself. So I'm going to multiply both sides by x. I'm going to have x times sine 37 equals 23. Now these are multiplying, and this is all so I can get x by itself. So now I'm going to get x by itself by dividing by sine 37. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I have x equals 23 over sine 37. And I'm going to plug that into my calculator and get 38.22 degrees. Okay, notice this next one. Up here, we were solving, we had an angle. Down here, we don't have an angle. So I'm going to put googly eyes on that, and that's when I know I'm going to need to use the inverse because I'm missing an angle. So I'm still going to write my opposite and my adjacent, right? Those are the two that I have. So opposite and adjacent is TOA. I'm going to say tangent x, because I don't know it, equals my opposite, 29, over my adjacent, 21. All right, and we can't technically divide by tangent, so what we do is we multiply it by tangent -1. That cancels out the tangent on this side and that side. And what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So what that looks like is x equals tangent -1 times 29 over 21. And when we plug that into the calculator, we end up with 54.09 degrees. That means this angle right here is equal to 54.09 degrees. Okay, we've got another ladder against the house. People must be doing some serious DIY. Okay, so we've got a 10-foot ladder leaning against the house. Here's my little house, and here's that ladder. If the ladder is 7 feet away from the base, the ladder is 10 feet, what angle does the ladder create with the ground? So right here, where the ladder is meeting with the ground, what angle is that? Trying to figure out an angle, that means we're going to use inverse. So I'm going to put my googly eyes here, and I'm going to identify this as my adjacent, and this would be my hypotenuse, right? Because the right angle is right here where the ground and the house meet. Okay, so an A and an H is cosine. So I'm going to do cosine x equals my adjacent, so 7, over my hypotenuse, 10. Right, and again, remember, I can't divide by cosine, so what I do is I multiply both sides by cosine -1. And these would cancel out, and I'm left with x equals cosine -1 times 7 over 10. All right, 2 more for the trig, and then we'll move on. Okay, so using law of sines. Remember, it's sine of A over side A equals sine B over side B. It's a proportion, right? So this side and this angle here, they correspond to each other, which means I need to figure out what this angle is. And this angle and this side, they correspond with each other. So I'm going to start with the one that I know. I'm going to do sine 37 over 17 equals, well, now we need to figure out what that angle is. Sine of this angle, which we're going to figure out in a second, over x. Okay, so in order to do that, I'm just going to do 180 minus 99 minus 37, and I am going to get 44 degrees. So sine 44. And from there, all I do is cross multiply. So I'm literally just going to multiply these and multiply those. Alright, so that's going to look like sine 37 times x equals sine 14 times 17. Alright, well, I want to get x by itself, so I'm going to divide by sine 37. And what you do to one side, you do to the other. So I'm going to divide by sine 37. Okay. So now all I'm going to do, or I know that x equals sine 14 times 17 over sine 37. And I just have to divide that in my calculator. And that becomes 19.62. Okie doke. Next up, law of cosine. Okay, so we want to know this side right here. Okay, so it's going to be x squared. It's going to equal these two sides squared. So 29 squared plus 21 squared, right? It's almost like the Pythagorean Theorem. But this is the add-on part, right? Equals 2, or not equals, minus, don't want two equal signs, that will get a bit confusing, minus 2 times these two sides that we know, 29 times 21, and then, because it's law of cosines, cosine of the angle across from it. Alright, I'm going to just simplify, and I'm going to do this bit first. So I'm going to get x squared equals 1282, these two squared and added together, minus 1218 cosine 113, right? I just kind of multiply those together. And I'm going to simplify that and get x squared equals 1757.91. Alright, you can plug this all into the calculator, but it just can be a bit confusing. So don't write that as your answer because remember x isn't alone. So now we want to take the square root of each side, and that will cancel out your x squared and your square root, and it will give you your answer of 41.93. And that's that for that unit.